Welcome to Home Gym History. I'm Rob from Vintage Weights PGH, and with me today is Ryan J. Pitts. Welcome, Ryan.
Rob, thanks for having me. This is
Absolutely.
exciting.
So I have known of Stronger Grip and now Ryan J. Pitts Presents for quite a while. I'd say about a year and a half or so before Home Gym Con this past spring. But then at Home Gym Con, I really got a chance to take a look at your offerings, take a look at your metal craft and some of the stuff that you bring to this industry. And I was pretty amazed. And there's a fun quality to it. So listeners, what we're going to get into in this episode is the history both of Ryan J. Pitts Presents and Stronger Grip and some of the stuff that he's been up to in his, couple decades now in the industry, but also get into what I see in his products, which would be a lot of historical strongman and historical carnival games and things, and even the like horror genre and some of the cool stuff that historically attaches to it. So if you want to learn more about historical carnival games and historical strongman stuff and some of the offerings of Ryan J. Pitts, and this is the episode for you. So with that said, what have you been up to since last April, since Home Gym Con? It's been a couple months now.
Oh, it has, and time flies. I've got, you said you have 4 kids. I've got 4 kids at home. Actually got
nice.
5 older kids as well out of the house. So I've got a lot of kids and always have stuff going on. Liz and I had a blast. It was so much fun being there. That was actually my first time really out, like with a booth. I mean, I've been doing stuff since I was a teenager, so getting out in front of people was pretty awesome. Got a new website. We went over to Shopify, so that got finished. Just kind of wrapping up some of the orders. I got a couple custom orders that I've got to get out the door. Other than that, same creative thing, always new ideas.
Yeah.
Got a new twist on one of my first products was the leverage block. And You probably have seen them. I think there's a company in UK that sells them. I think Titan has them now. And Arm Assassin Strength. That was my first product. And I've got a new kind of sleeker, more well-rounded, useful piece that I'm working on. So I'm excited to bring that out.
Like in the vintage weights world, we call those generations. So it's like a new generation, of that, a new iteration of it. That's cool.
The fun thing for me is everything I do, I make because I'm interested in something. So there's been so many generations of things that I've come out with. Looking at my site, I've had over 100 products that I've offered over the years.
You just keep tinkering and kind of working with them.
I'll go to bed thinking of stuff and dream about it. And the next morning I get to go to the shop and make it. That's
cool.
That's the funnest thing for me. And then I use it. And then with the wonderful world of the internet, I can put it out there and then maybe someone else likes it too.
Well, I mean, for someone who has no idea what a leverage block is, has no idea, has never heard of you or your company, what would be the elevator pitch? What would be like the easy description? Like you meet someone in a grocery store and they say, you have a company? What do you do?
You know what, Rob? I'm 51 now and I still have a hard time answering that question to people. I have fun and I enjoy whatever I'm into at any given time. It's pretty well. Actually, before we left for Home Gym Con, our local library got a hold of me and asked if I wanted to do some permanent metal sculptures for outside the library, as well as put on an art show. So that I'm super excited about that. How do you? I don't know. I don't know who my crowd is.
Do you have a product in your lineup that's, or a couple products in your lineup that are kind of your bread and butter that are just like go-to over the years or even right now? Or is there any favorites?
Now, the Smash Target is our best seller. Man, and that again is a funny how that came out. I'm trying to think of what year I came up with my loadable sledgehammer and then what made me try to cut a tire in half.
Yeah,
I don't remember, but I know that it was super late into the wee hours. Because before, I'm a journeyman machinist by trade. So I've worked in a shop for 20 years, and then I've been fortunate enough to do this full time for the last 14. But yeah, I remember finally getting one cut in two, which was a heck of a process itself. And then
Yeah.
I was smashing on the half a tire like at 1 or 2 in the morning, and I remember a neighbor commenting the next day, wondering what the heck that sound was, and that was the birth
Well,
of the smash target.
you kind of speak to one of the things I just thought of as a question about the smash target. So, if listeners, you've never seen it, we've just dropped some pictures in here of it in post production, but it's essentially, if you're listening on a podcast platform that you can't see it and didn't see those pictures, Ryan makes these loadable hammers that are works of art and functional. So that's what I
Yeah.
like about your company is that you can find a lot of tools for your gym, but boy, do these things look fun too.
Mhm.
And that's part of it to me is that's great about having a home gym is finding those things that motivate you to actually use them. So
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
the
And they
smash
kind of
target, it looks kind of like I could do that. Like this guy cut a tire in half, but you just spoke to it like, go ahead and try. That's no easy
yeah,
task, you know?
it's not. I've actually got my own jaws of life,
Oh
like
wow.
a firefight. Yeah, so
Okay.
you snap the four beads, and these are like skid loader tires where
Yeah, they're
each
not
half
like,
weighs 30 to 40 pounds. So a
yeah.
regular car or even a heavy duty truck tire won't. It just doesn't stand up to
Hmm.
these.
And I've seen your posts on Instagram of you and your wife and some other people. I think I even saw some of your kids using it like a smash target,
Yes,
and
yes.
so does it give a little bounce back, if you will, on the
It, it
return?
It absolutely does,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, when you first use it, you get I mean, like sledgehammer training in general. I think it's kind of a very awkward movement for people. They
Hmm.
know what it is. Oh yes, I can do that, but you give it to them, and it just feels so awkward. You've got the spatial kind of awareness of where you are related to it, so
Hmm.
you got to have your feet in the right place, and then yes, when you hit it, be ready for the rebound. And so, unlike chopping wood, you get to just go after it. It almost, some of
Yeah.
them comes back to you, so you can really just keep wailing depending on how heavy. I've got one guy in Illinois who's got his epic sledge loaded up to 100 pounds. And
Wow.
that's more of a you're pulling it, you're pressing it, and then you're
Yeah.
riding it down and getting right back underneath it.
That's a, it's the difference between a U-turn and a 3-point turn. Like that's a
Yeah,
3-point turn.
yes, yes.
Wow. So what led you to sledgehammers and sledgehammer training and kind of designing these heavy sledgehammers, these adjustable, loadable sledgehammers?
Yeah, I've always training for me has always been like everything.
Hmm.
Martial arts, Highland games, kettle, you name it. I've always just wanted more and more and more knowledge, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Qigong,
Yeah.
deep breathe, all everything. So I'm pretty sure, and then bodybuilding. That's where I started in the mid '80s, '90s. So I had a subscription to every single muscle magazine. You know, who didn't want to
Yeah.
be? Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone. Those were the movies that I
Yeah.
just couldn't get enough of.
All you had to do was follow that program in the magazine.
Yes, yes, it was awesome. It was great
Yeah.
times, and but I also saw like the downside of that and
Hmm.
the kind of excess. And then you saw some of your idols dying so
Oh
early,
yeah.
and then you can put the puzzle pieces together, and
Yeah.
they call it bodybuilding, but they're kind of destroying themselves. So
Sure.
you actually like Brooks Kubik's dinosaur training. There was
Oh,
in Iron Man magazine,
it's
he had a
sitting right
column.
behind me. One of my
Yes,
favorite books.
and that was a huge. That was pretty much kind of what brought Stronger Grip together, was reading
Really?
that and
That's
seeing
great.
the thick barbell stuff, and it's like,
Uh-huh.
oh man, that's awesome. So that was a phase, and
Okay.
then really feats of strength. Um,
Nice.
I ordered Dennis Rogers
Hmm.
feats of strength DVDs, and I ordered them from Bud Jeffries. Actually, his site, he would sell them,
Yeah.
and that led me to Dennis because Bud at that time was having problem fulfilling stuff.
Okay.
So I reached out to him many times, and he just didn't get back to me. Bud and I were good friends too. Him and his son Noah stopped by the house on a couple
Uh-huh.
occasions, and really cool dude. But
I
anyway, so I
just
reached out to.
well, I
Go
was going to
ahead.
say for listeners that aren't too aware of dinosaur training or Brooks Cubic, some of these names are being thrown out. Um, my sister podcast to this, if you will, that I go deeper into the weeds, Lift History, over on my YouTube channel. The most recent
Ah,
episode is my favorite books of the past, whatever year or two.
yes.
And one of them is Dinosaur Training. I talk about a little bit. So I'll drop a link down in the description for Lift History episode. So then, you're getting inspired by these different training protocols, by these kind of like off the beaten path from bodybuilding, thick handled stuff. You see the sledgehammers. Um, does it just naturally, as you said you were a machinist, come to mind
Yes.
like, well, I want to make something?
Absolutely. Everything has
Nice.
been that path. Well, and I've always had kids, so it's like, okay, I can, so why not? I'll make it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool.
And
So,
I've made everything. Like as a teenager, I made my own power rack. I made my own set of dumbbells when I was like 19. I got
wow.
a full, I think it was a 10-foot, 8-inch diameter bar of hot roll steel, and then
Oh,
did all the
jeez.
math and sawed all the pieces for the
Wow.
dumbbells, put them on a lathe, drilled the holes, knurled the handle. So I had a set from 95 all the way to 25 of dumbbells.
And how old are you when you're doing this?
This was when I was 19, 20 years
Oh my
old.
gosh. So you'd been to like a trade school of some type for machining and whatnot.
Yep, yep, yep.
And but still that's pretty young. You're pretty green, in terms of your career being 18, 19. And
Absolutely.
that's awesome. Made your own dumbbells.
And like in high school, I took drafting, and then
Okay.
I actually got a job when I was 16 at this machine shop as their
Mm.
draftsman. So I'm 16 years old drawing the blueprints for this place, and then it led into just
Wow.
blueprinting my own weight equipment. And yeah, I would
That's
sell them through
awesome.
the newspaper classifieds before the internet.
Yeah. Hey, so that was, like you said, you've been making and selling stuff since you were a kid.
Right, right.
There it is. So
Uh,
then when it comes to the sledgehammer stuff, that's where I see a lot of historical connection. And I know you see it too, because at home Gym Con, you were dressed like the, master of ceremonies of a circus.
yes,
You and your wife had a whole carnival kind of costume on, and you had a high striker there
yes.
for ticket holders and people to try out. And for listeners that don't know, a high striker is the classic, or test your strength machine, sometimes it's called, is the classic, like from the turn of the century carnival game where you swing the heavy hammer and you hit the lever, if you will, the pad, and then that
Ring the
sends a little
bell.
little thing up to ring a bell. And I mean, I tried, and to be fair, it was after I already competed in the grip competition, but I couldn't hit the
Yes.
bell. How many people hit the bell?
It went through different phases, and to be honest, that came together the night before we left.
Oh
I
wow.
was I was sweating bullets trying to get this thing made. I wanted it done so
That's
bad,
funny.
but I gave myself like 6 days to do it,
Oh
and I
wow.
didn't have a clear design. It just started coming together, and yeah, the day before I was tweaking it, trying to get it to work because I didn't want it too hard. I didn't want it too easy. And I almost threw the towel in. And then an hour later, I finally got a working version. And there was a couple beasts that actually bent my fulcrum. So I'm
Really?
glad.
So it didn't just ring
Yes.
the bell, like broke the machine.
It didn't
Well,
break it because it continued to work. But
well, that's
I've
good.
actually I had so many people wondering, could they get one? So I'm working on a
Yeah.
commercial version right now.
Oh, cool, cool. I
Yes.
mean, have you ever heard the history of it? I mean, I won't give you a 3-hour lecture here, but have you ever heard like where they came from?
No, no.
Oh, well, in 1885, so the historically paint a little context, that's when things are heating up for classic strongmen. I mean, that's where, you're getting closer to Eugene Sandow and Louis Cyr and Arthur Saxon, the Saxon brothers, and all those classic
Yes.
strongmen, the turn of the century. And you've got circuses that are hiring these guys. So, and then early 1900s, late 1800s, to as acts. So circuses you've probably heard of, like Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey. This is before they combined into one entity. So like Ringling Brothers brought over and toured with Louis Cyr, and Barnum and Bailey brought the great French strongman. I'm blanking on his name right now. He's called a French Hercules. One of my listeners can drop his name, but
Yeah.
Barnum and Bailey toured with him. Well, part of the shtick was that a lot of times they would issue a challenge to the crowd that, if I can bent press this humongous dumbbell, if anyone can do this, I'll give you the
Yeah, the
money.
Thomas Inch dumbbell. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So they'd issue this thing. And for the crowd, sometimes the local strongest person would give it a shot. Well, people like testing their strength. People like feats of strength, is what these promoters and circus men discovered. So in 1885, a man named Richard Page invented and patented the very first test your strength machine because he
Nice.
figured, and historians think at least, I mean, there's no like diary of his saying this, but it's a pretty good inference that he figured that, well, a man is fallible, a man can have an off night, but a machine is not. So he created this machine, the test your strength machine, otherwise called the high striker, where you buy one of these and now you can have it at your amusement park, your carnival. You can tour with it and set it up, and people can pay a price and see if they can hit the bell and win the money. And the machine never
Nice.
gets tired. Louis Cyr, even the great Louis Cyr, would get tired. Well, the
Right.
machine doesn't get tired. Even when you bent the fulcrum, like at home
Yeah.
gym con, it kept it kept going. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's the short, history of high strikers, and it's pretty cool to see it in action. 130 odd years later at home gym con, you've got a high striker, and there was times where I
Yes.
walked by and there was a line of people waiting to use it.
That's and for me, training has always been fun.
Yeah.
It's always been a pursuit of something, usually to
Uh-huh.
get better at whatever. Yeah, like I got my black belt in Taekwondo, and
Uh-huh.
that was kind of the years when I found Pavel stuff and kettlebells.
Okay.
Yeah, and kettlebells for a period you couldn't find them anywhere. Dragon Door wasn't even selling them yet, so
Yeah.
I made so many kettlebells where they were steel globe shells, and I would melt lead and fill them up, and I sold
Wow.
them through eBay. So there's quite a few of those out there. I made some 8-inch globes filled with melted lead, and they were like 105 pounds.
Jeez. Well, I mean, it shows your business acumen that you saw a need, you saw a
Yes,
desire,
yes.
and you got to fill that. There's a supply and demand. You saw a demand.
Right, right.
So
Just the time involved in some of this stuff. I don't know if there's a profit margin or not, but
yeah, yeah. So have you ever? Has there ever been something that you designed and you were full throttle obsessed with it? Because you sound like that type of person that you just kind of, man, your laser focus gets on something and you're on it. Have you ever developed something that then it was crickets, no one bought it, and you were like, "What the heck? I thought this was like the next big thing."
you know what? A lot of that is just exposure, I guess. You know what I mean? And then yeah,
Yeah.
what people see and who you are. Even you can have something, and then someone else has it, and it's either has more. Abmat, I guess, did that for our what I had was the gut wrench, and it's the
Okay.
barbell bomb. So that was a pretty cool.
Ah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
They worked with my partner Eric and I with that, and
Uh
so
huh.
the most we ever sold of our gut wrench, which was a metal version of that, was like 300 a year, and
Ah.
they've sold like thousands a month for the last year or two, and it's like,
Making it
whoa,
out of
that's
the
yeah.
molded foam that they use.
Yes, yes, which
Gotcha.
was is a much better product for that too. It's like
So did they
ideal.
reach out to you about that and work with you on that?
We were doing we had what we called gut wrench pros, and we
Okay.
would reach out to people, and we'd give them a free gut wrench, and then they would use it. I don't know if they saw us or Eric knew somebody.
Hmm.
Another company, Stronger Than You, is who I'm referring to. Eric Chesson was my
Okay.
partner in that. And that was something that I make tons of stuff, so I'm fine sharing ideas. And
Yeah.
Eric was a customer that would always say, "Hey, I've got an idea for this," because he wanted it for his personal collection. And so, man, I think it was 2009. I reached out to him and said, "Hey, do you just want to start our own company?"
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
the hopes that I didn't have to make every single thing. And years and years went on where I was making everything. And
Yeah.
so finally, it was 2 years ago where the AbMat connection came in,
Gotcha.
and kind of fulfilled a dream, I guess, for me,
Yeah. It
where
just made sense.
we've got an idea and we get checks, and I don't have to make everything
Yeah.
that comes
Exactly.
in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's when you find a company that fulfills that, it works out for you. Like,
Yeah,
um, I've
It
only come
does.
up with and designed one product, my vintage gains. They're do-it-yourself calibration plates that are magnetic. So
Okay.
weights don't often weigh what they should weigh. So then you take
Right.
my
Right.
calibration plate and it's a quarter pound, half pound. You weigh your weight, you put it on there, and now for a small cost, you've calibrated weights and you're lifting accurately what you want to lift. So I went to
Nice.
micro
Nice.
gains and same
Oh
idea.
yeah. Yeah.
Micro
Those.
gains, they make their fractional plates and other offerings, and they had the infrastructure, everything set up. Mike's been in the
Yeah.
business
That's
for a
Mike,
while
right?
now. Yep, they were at
Yeah. He
Home
was
Gym Con,
awesome. We met.
and
Yeah. Him
yeah,
and his wife.
it was like a match made in heaven. It was so easy to work together, and I've got this idea. He's got the means to do it. So now, I get a little royalty here and there, but he's making them, and it's if I would have tried to do it on my own, it just would have been, yeah, it wouldn't have
It's
happened.
no. It seems easy, right? Because I've
Exactly. It's
people
from the
don't
outside
know.
looking in. People constantly
Right.
think like, "Oh, that's easy." Kind of like I said about the
Yes.
smash target. Like, "Oh, I'll just cut a
Uh,
tire in half." You
just
know,
creating anything is it's a process. I mean,
totally.
ideas are wonderful, but man, bringing that to the public and then
Mhm.
everything that ensues afterwards, it can get grueling, and it's not made for everyone.
Well, you had this, for example, the high striker. This was like a last minute idea, like you said, like, oh
Yes.
man, this will be fun. I'll put it at the booth. And by the way, huge compliment. I think, it's been 2 years now of home gym cons. So I've seen a fair amount of booths at this point. And, for a first time ever, like this is the first time you've ever come to like an expo, whatever, show, thing, set up a booth. You had all the right elements. And I think I might have even spoken to that on a Garage Gym Experiment podcast
Ah,
at one point, that like I think you had all the elements. There was a little bit of fun and interactive kind of nature to your
yes.
booth. You had all your stuff on display so people could pick it up and handle it or look at it. You had something to draw them in with your costumes and your various things going on. So yeah, you're quite a showman. So big compliment, first of all.
Thank you
Second
for
of
that.
all, the high striker, how often does that happen that like now it was last minute idea, but it was successful. So now you're kind of thinking about a version that you could sell. Do you
Yeah.
have people come to you with something like, oh, could you make me this? But then you end up like, oh, maybe I could sell this as well.
Yeah, yeah. There's been a few of that. The gut wrench turn to the barbell bomb was one of
Exactly.
those. And with my background in blueprinting and machining, I actually offer the service of product development because
Okay.
that's a very hard kind of terrain for people to navigate when
Hmm.
they have an idea
Yeah.
with nothing behind it. And it's costly. If you go to a shop, they may not have any idea what you're talking about when it comes to strength stuff. And a lot of places just won't. They don't want to mess around with just one-off stuff. So I can shorten that time frame
True.
and save quite a bit of money, or at least they have their own. If they want to go to another level, they can,
Hmm.
um, or just enjoy it for themselves. But yeah, it's
Well, as far as some of your themes, like I mentioned, the circus kind of carnival atmosphere, that makes sense with your products, but did the products come first and then the theme come in, or was it just organically or naturally happen together? I know you're a
it.
voracious reader. I've seen,
Yes.
posts about books and things. Was it because you just read a bunch of stories about carnivals? Like, where did it all come from?
Right. I've always loved that the freaks and stuff like that, and again like the old time strongman, the circus stuff.
Yeah.
The feats of strength again were one of my passions, and that's again what kind of started the stronger grip. Was I needed equipment to make my wrists and stronger to bend steel and rip phone books,
Hmm.
and that whole thing led up to my initial offerings. Also, I'm a super introverted, reserved guy. It might not seem like it now, but that's my resting mode. Is I just like being alone. Alone. So it took me years and years to finally kind of come into, okay, nobody else is going to promote myself, so I've got to be the one. It's got to be Ryan J. Pitts presents
Hmm.
because no one else is going to do that for me. I don't
Yeah.
I don't build those connections for some reason with with cultish type followings because I'm too scatterbrained, I guess.
Yeah. Well, after like 12 hours a day of meeting and greeting and interacting with people at home gym con, you must have had to like hole up in your house for a week
Yeah,
just to
nope.
recover.
I get along pretty good. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny you say that because there's myself, it took me a long time to get on camera and my YouTube videos, and quite a lot of encouragement from Jake to even start podcasting and things. So
Yeah.
it's people, don't believe it when I tell them that I'm kind of nervous in front of the camera, and they're
Yes.
like, "Well, why
Yes.
are you doing all this stuff?" Because
It's
I
to
don't know.
it's
Yeah,
to stretch what we're comfortable with. Yes.
exactly. The same reason you lift weights, you want to
Yep.
get stronger.
Yep. You
So
want to get better.
there's a there's a attraction to that kind of genre. The same thing with horror movies and horror kind of genre, because you have a whole like serial killer horror kind of spin of things where sometimes your promotional kind of content's a little creepy. Where's
Yeah.
that come in? Do you like you just enjoy those novels, those movies?
We do. My wife and I are huge horror fans.
Okay.
We've gone to some oddities and curiosities shows.
Yeah.
So yes, and then with Indian clubs,
Hmm.
a machete. Why not? It's the same thing. It
It's
just
the same
looks
thing.
cooler.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have an earlier episode of Home Gym History where I had a whole episode about the history of Indian clubs and
Okay.
maces and swinging. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't have a much, I don't have much of a training background in that myself personally. It's something I'm curious
Okay.
about. I'd like to get into. I've never really
Yeah.
tried, but I do have a historical, knowledge of
Right.
that, of where they came from. So I can attest that, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a long implement that you're holding at one end and then you're swinging around. So why not swing
Yes.
machetes around? It'll look pretty badass.
Absolutely. And I've always evolved that way, where because I've had loadable maces before they were awesome or people knew about them,
Yeah.
and then everybody has them. So then you come out with a different twist of it,
Mm.
and all those exercises are fantastic additions to regular training. I mean, it's for the feats of strength. I would say almost a necessity if you want to stay healthy and keep doing that stuff, because I've got some friends that are pretty heavy into that, but they're also pretty abused. it's
Yeah.
a it's a
Yeah.
it's a brutal thing we do to ourselves, and
Yeah. You get beat up.
you've got to weigh the benefits of, do I want to be able to move and be functional as I age,
Totally.
or
I've,
just be known that I did this really cool stuff at this time of my life.
yeah. I mean, I've had some of the most elite powerlifters on the show, stuff like that. That, yeah. I mean, there's a give and take. There's a damage
Yes.
to your body that happens
Uh-huh.
sometimes. Or you mentioned with bodybuilding. I mean, there's a definite price to be paid when you go
Yeah.
above certain normalcies, when you really hit extreme levels of things in
Yeah.
terms of what you're chasing. So then, could you speak to that at all? Like how, some of the stuff you sell, the hammers or some of the implements, how do your products fit into, because it's not, if I was starting a home gym, I don't think Ryan J. Pitts Presents is going to be the place to necessarily find a bench, a squat rack, the kind of
Right. Right.
barbell tried and true. So then where do the products of Ryan J. Pitts fit into, a workout routine, into a program, into training?
I would say they're it's almost like hygiene, I guess. They're movements and things you do to tie your whole body together, to keep keep it uh, keep it all together, for lack of a
Yeah.
better word. You know what I mean? Because swinging a sledgehammer, you're not using one muscle group. You're
No.
teaching your body to work in concert and doing this explosive movement. So that type of stuff carries over into everyday life, but also makes your other lifts just stronger and safer too.
Yeah, I could see that. And I no, I think some of those really functional movements, because it's basically manual labor swinging a
Right,
sledgehammer,
right. Which is a missing thing in today's society. Everything's getting
Yeah.
easier and easier.
Uh-huh.
So you've got to go out and search for ways to not.
But also, I think of the main three of, I just brought up powerlifting. So for example, squat, bench, deadlift, you're not twisting in any way by design. You're very
Yes,
rigid.
yes.
It's a very linear, rigid movement, all three of those movements.
Fantastic movements. Yes.
Great movements. Yeah. They work so many muscles, wonderful movements. You could exist just on those, but you can also complement and get some of that rotation, with a movement like a sledgehammer. And like you
Yes.
said, you're also rotating in a different way. Your shoulders, you're rotating your back, your upper back in a different way, your lower back, your hips, your legs. It's all moving in a very different rotational pattern than those kind of tried and true squat, bench, deadlift movements. So that's, I think,
Absolutely.
would be very complementary as a accessory movement, as a recovery movement, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And a warm up, a cool down. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, you're doing these linear things. Now you add that in, and now you can go out in the world and be
Yeah.
functional. You can wipe your
Exactly.
own butt. You can throw
Yeah.
your kids in
Yeah.
the air.
I'm not, I'm not going to look over my shoulder and be sore. Yeah.
Right, right.
So yeah, I could see that for sure. And then, I mean, something near and dear to my heart is grip training, because I've become obsessed in the last year and a half to 2 years. I've started competing in grip competitions, and then I directed the grip strength competition at Home Gym Con. I'll be doing that again next year. And you were one of the sponsors. Your blob trainer was one of the implements in the medley for the grip competition. And I gotta say, I think it shocked some people. It surprised some people, because
Yeah.
it was, and to be fair, the weight that I had it set at had something to do with it too. But
Mm.
people struggled. They were like, I think they underestimated it. They thought, oh,
Yeah.
there's this round object, I'm just going to grab it and pick it up. But yeah, there were some folks that struggled with it. So it was a fun one, because it was one of the ones that after, we had 31 competitors. So after you saw 5 or 6 struggle, then as you're watching, you can key into like, oh, I want to see if this one gets it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That was.
how's the blob trainer? How's the more grip focused items of yours? How have they come about? Did you just think, hey, this is an economical way rather than getting all these vintage Yorks and roundheads and
Yeah.
chopping them up?
I'm a massive collector of heavy objects. So if I see stuff or it's just I gotta have it. Yeah, you know
Yeah,
what I'm talking about.
yeah,
I can't have
totally.
enough stuff. I've got a lot of space too with the shop and the garage and the house. But the blob it just made a lot of sense because not everybody does have a lot of space, and
No,
so when you see collections of 30 blobs, solid objects,
yeah,
oh, here, I can do it in just one. You can get a loadable blob
yeah,
and it weighs, I think, 7 pounds empty. And
hmm,
then you can put shot in it, micro load it,
yeah,
or put plates on it. So you have an unlimited amount to work up to, the actual blob with one setup. So it just made sense, and it was a fun thing to make.
Well, it was quite a challenge for a lot of people, and I think going into next year's Home Gym Con, we'll work together. We'll come up with something to throw a throw a challenge at them. There's
Yes.
there may be a twist to it, Jake. There'll be an episode of Garage Gym Experiment that just came out, and one coming out in the future about the Garage Gym Games that Jake is starting, where it's going to be instead of separate events, kind of trying to tie together like
Oh,
an ultimate competition to name like the ultimate garage gym athlete.
yeah, I like
So
that.
yeah,
I
so
like
it's an
that.
interesting kind of take on things that he's working on and that we're working on as a team. So we'll definitely keep you in the loop and keep you
Yeah,
informed
please,
on it.
please do. I'll come up with
So
something unique for it, or I'd like to see a
yeah,
sledgehammer event too,
well,
where
exactly, and that would be
yeah.
cool to have a sledgehammer event and have a smash target out there or something. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Uh,
So when it comes to um, your own fitness, staying in shape. You said you're 51, so
yeah.
you know you're a sprite 51. You're a strong looking guy. What is it good enough just working with your hands and working and doing this labor, making this stuff, or what are some of the things that Are you swinging your sledgehammers? What are your favorite things these days?
Yes, I like to test everything I make, so I'm
Yeah,
constantly
yeah, that
using.
helps.
Uh, and honestly, starting training at 14,
Hmm.
and really never stopping has helped. and then realizing that excess is not good, and it's pretty easy when you start young to keep a certain level of fitness and health, as opposed to waiting till you're later and then you think you've got to just kill yourself to reach a certain level. And
Mm.
I think that's one of the downfalls is just too much. If you're aware of what you're eating and you're moving at a decent pace every day, that's you're going to win. It's not really
Yeah.
as hard as it seems. I don't feel.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, basically, finding that good pace for your season of life, for where you are, so you don't go too excessively.
Absolutely. And again, I love everything.
Yeah.
Liz and I were just out in the gym this morning, and we were doing pull downs and bench press and squats. So
Yeah.
I love all modes of training, and I
Gotcha.
use them all too.
Yeah. So then let's go backwards. So one of the things I like to do on home gym history is just ask your home gym history. So we heard a little bit of that already. Like you made your own dumbbells when you were 19, but rewind even more. Like, can you remember a pinpoint when you were a kid? Like when was the first time you thought like, I want to lift some weights and get stronger?
Yes, it's super vivid for me because at 14, my dad had these Joe Weider lessons, like week 1 through 7.
Sure.
I've still
Yeah.
got
Like a
I've still got
program.
them.
Oh,
Yes,
cool.
yes. I discovered those and it was like gold for me. Nobody pushed me, nobody watched me. I just found them and then started doing them on my own, week 1, week 2. And they were body weight exercises,
Yeah.
push ups on chairs,
Calisthenics and stuff.
calisthenics, a broomstick across the chairs for pull ups. And
Yeah.
I followed them like a psycho every week, and that was it for me. It's like, wow, I didn't know. I didn't know
Uh-huh.
you could control and do these things.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
then did you progress to, asking your parents for like a bench or something at home, or did you start going to your school's gym or something? Where did it progress from there?
from there, I bought my own Joe Weider weight bench set.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the narrow
Oh
uprights,
yeah.
and now another kind of I think fortunate thing for me is I had a paper route from age 11 to 16.
Mm.
And people probably don't know what that is.
Yeah,
but
I
every
do, but yeah, some people might not.
but if
Yeah.
they can picture a young kid at 11 getting up every morning at 5 to 6 a.m.
Oh
and
yeah.
riding their bike for I don't know how many miles every
Uh-huh.
single day. There's no days off. So for that many years, I was doing that.
Plus, I don't know
Um,
about you, but in my day, you had to like roll the papers and rubber band them, and oh my
yes,
gosh, the Saturday
had
Sunday editions
two,
were this thick. I mean,
two sacks on each side of you riding
yeah,
your bike,
yeah, yeah.
listening to hair metal on my Walkman.
Yeah. Stop and flip the tape. Yeah.
Yes. So I really think that was a huge, just a part of who I am today and why I'm in good shape is that foundation as a
Sure.
youth. And there was no excuses. There was no I don't want to deliver papers. You had to get up. You had to get up
Yeah.
and do
Yeah.
them.
True. So they have the setup. I recently had a video on my YouTube channel that I put out of an old York bench that's very similar, the narrow uprights and everything. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and I was playing around with it and kind of seeing like, okay, how much weight can you, this is going to flip a bar over. Yeah. So you have a bench like that from Weeder, this narrow bench, and then you got the paper route. And now, you go to school and you learn how to become a machinist, drafting. You mentioned 16, you were working part-time, drafting. And then when you're about 18, 19, you start making dumbbells, start making some more serious equipment for yourself. So then where's that
Yeah.
stuff going? Are you still living at home? Is that going into like a basement gym or something, a garage gym?
All the stuff I made, I was living in an apartment.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, it was all in the basement of a house,
Yeah.
or the basement of a duplex. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and then the gym. I guess around 16, me and a couple buddies were hitting the gyms too, local
Yeah.
gyms.
Sure.
So
And
yeah,
then, as you're building out things in that basement gym, time progresses. are you just dragging all that equipment to the next apartment, the next house?
Yes,
You know, the
yes,
classic,
yes.
like, oh my gosh, I've got
And
to move
no
1,000 pounds worth of stuff.
no one to help. Nobody wants to help.
No, never. Suddenly your friends just dissipate. Yeah, they just
Right.
disappear. Sure, sure. So then, right now, when you're talking about how you and your wife, you're going to work out, you have a bench, stuff like that. Is there anything sitting in your gym right now that's been around for years that you can think of?
Oh,
I'm putting you on the spot here, but if you
yeah,
think about your
yeah.
gym in your mind for a second, is there anything that's been sitting around for years that you've just had forever that you made
Man,
or bought, either way?
I guess wood is forever because
Yeah, yeah,
there's lots of
yeah, yeah.
there's
Well,
lots
I
of
mean, like
things.
those dumbbells are those dumbbells you made still sitting there from when you were
Oh,
19, or have they gone by the
here's
wayside?
they had. Here's a fun story about those. So I don't remember the year, but it was many years after I made them, and I was living at a different place. Again, 5 kids at home. There was a traveling meat salesman. Yeah,
Okay.
he was selling steaks and stuff.
This sounds
So
like the start to a horror movie, by the way.
I,
Just
tra-
so, just so we're
I
clear.
traded I traded the set of dumbbells for a bunch of meat at
Oh my
that time,
gosh! Wow.
and then many years passed, and I ended up finding a 25 pounder and one 35 pounder at a local Salvation Army.
No way.
Yes, yes.
You're like,
They,
I made those. Yeah.
they traded them. They were gone, and then 2 of them showed back up, and I'm like, oh,
Oh,
I wish I knew where the rest of them were.
that's funny. They're out there somewhere.
Yes.
I was just I did a home gym tour with Kevin Rahill out in Cleveland, and that's another one of my YouTube videos that just came out. But he has a pair of homemade dumbbells that are,
Okay.
I want to say they were like his 70-pound dumbbells. I don't know. I might be
Oh,
off on the weight, but they were homemade dumbbells, and they were clearly homemade. They were welded, and welded 1-inch handles that are on kind of steel heads, just like you described, like a roll of steel that someone cut.
yeah.
And it was cut to the thickness so it'd be the right weight. So it was about 4 inches or
Absolutely.
whatever. And he just bought them secondhand, thought they were cool. So I
Oh,
bet you your dumbbells are somewhere, hopefully not
I
at a
hope so.
scrapyard. Hopefully they're in
I hope
someone's home
not.
gym, like Kevin's home gym, someone's using them somewhere.
I do have a pair of 155-pound dumbbells
Oh,
that I
wow.
made way back too. They've got 1.5-inch diameter knurled handles, and they're made out of 10-inch
Man.
round stock. I'll have to
Jeez.
post, I'll have to post pictures of those.
Please
Yeah.
do. I want to lift those. That's a grip strength, feet of strength to do some farmer's walks with those. I mean,
Oh man.
155 pounds each with a one and a
Yeah, I
half
was
inch.
I was I was quite a dreamer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now I'm training for the Thomas Inch,
Okay.
and it's one of my goals is to lift the Thomas Inch replica. And I I'm right about. I have a strength shop company made some thick handle dumbbells, and their handle is kind of an oval shape, but it still
Okay.
is tough. And I have a 64 kilogram, so about 140-pound one, and it's a 2-inch like oval shaped handle, and I can barely get it off the ground. I can't deadlift it yet. Like that's my next feat. And then I have
Yeah.
an Iron Mind Thomas Inch replica. They used to make them, and I found it on the used market. So that's what
Okay.
I'm ultimately working towards is lifting the Thomas Inch replica. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking in my head, like, I'm barely getting this 2-inch handle, 140-pound off the ground at all. So, like, a 1.5-inch handle is going to be easier, but 155 pounds and both hands, like in my offhand too, that's my strong hand that's kind of getting it. I don't know if I could pull that off. That's a tough one. Wow. If
Yes.
you have those, I think we might have just found a candidate for the grip strength contest
Yeah.
next year. Like,
Yes.
let's see how far people can walk with those suckers.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty amazing. We should. I'm gonna write that down in my notebook. We'll come back to that. We'll
Yeah.
see if you can drag those. That's the hard part. Convincing a nice man like yourself to drag
Yes.
310 pounds worth of dumbbells across.
I'll be bringing a trailer anyway, so it's
Ah,
no
that's
big
true.
deal.
I guess so. That's true. So, feats of strength. You named just kind of. That's what I love about this conversation, is that you just kind of off the cuff mentioned some of these things that are like classic feats of strength. Like the guys that I named, Saxon, Sear, all those guys. There's lots
Yeah.
of guys that ripped telephone books once telephone books were a thing, and lots of guys that bent over their heads or over their necks or over their legs, bent steel rods, because
Yeah.
the name of the game was doing something that the crowd could relate to and
Yeah.
see.
Relatable.
Yeah,
Yes.
and see as being, whoa, that's crazy. Because I mean, if you can't tell how heavy it is, then you might not realize what an amazing thing it is that they're doing. Or if you can't
Right.
tell that, wow, he's bending steel, that seems, ungodly. So
Yeah.
how did you learn to do any of these things? Was it trial and error? Were you just picking up pieces of steel and seeing if you could do it?
It was Dennis Rogers. He had a
Okay.
whole Strongman University thing, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he invited me down for the first one they had, where Chris Ryder was there,
Okay.
Mike Gillette, Logan Christopher, Bud Jeffries. I think Bud, no Bud, yeah, Bud might have been there. He was at a different one,
Mm.
but a lot of the John McGrath was there. A lot of guys that do that stuff. The Mike the Machine Bruce. It was an awesome thing, and yeah, he invited me down. And Dennis's teaching is kind of funny because I think he could do all that stuff without ever trying. So when it's like LeBron James teaching
Yeah,
you basketball. Hey, here,
exactly.
can you do that? Can you
Yeah,
do
you just rip
this?
it in half.
Yes, but there's definitely techniques.
Sure.
But most all, it's just a pain tolerance thing and sticking
Uh,
to it. It's brutal. Yes.
Well, I imagine it's training like anything else. Like a friend of mine, Chaz, Stranger Grip on Instagram, to give him a shout out. He told me, I don't think he minds me telling the story, but he told me that when he was in high school, he wanted to learn how to rip telephone books. So he called up the telephone company and said, like, I need, 100 telephone books. And they sent, because they would send free of charge one telephone book, but then they were like,
Right.
okay, sir. And suddenly, like, his mom came home from work and there were boxes and like it. You can't, 100 telephone books takes a lot of boxes. And I might even be off. It might have been a couple hundred that he ordered, but
Yeah.
boxes and boxes of telephone books in his front yard that he then had to store in a house somewhere and try to rip them all. So, yeah, practice, practice, practice.
Practice. Yep. I had a few things for that. I had a horseshoe bending type apparatus too
Oh,
that
cool.
I never quite fully developed.
Mm.
At some point, I'd like to revisit all that too and go back to some of those things. And I
Yeah.
was performing. I would perform at some schools, and our local town would have a car show, Children's Day, where I would do
Okay.
feats of strength.
Oh,
And
fun.
I had a huge platform that I made where I would do. I would swing. I had a human swing, so it
Okay.
was like a kettlebell swing, but people would sit on it, and I would be up above, and I would do swings with them.
Oh
And
my
I also
gosh.
had a jaw lifting device with a
Okay.
swing set attachment seat on it, so kids would get in that, and then I would just swing them using my jaw strength.
So you're not just, this is great because I mean, it's kind of cool that you're not just making this stuff that has an homage
Yeah,
to old time
yeah.
strongman. You have a
It was
little bit
all
of
just it was all
experience.
for me. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to.
You have a little bit of experience because that's all stuff that old time strongmen did.
Yes,
I mean, York all the way up through the 70s used to sell a teeth lifting
device. Yeah,
device. It was basically a leather strap around a ring that you would
yep.
put in your mouth. It's kind of like the one vintage weight item that I don't think I want to buy used. I don't want someone's old
Right.
teeth lifting strap, but
Yes. Yeah.
they had an actual leather teeth lifting item. And
Yes.
yeah, that was a common thing. Supporting other humans, lifting other people. That was a very common kind of strongman act,
Well, it's
strongman
it's
thing.
so visual. They get it. They
Totally.
can see. Oh, that guy's big. He's got to weigh whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. And this other guy's holding him by his teeth. So yeah. So I mean, that's very cool. So then anything that's a personal favorite? I mean, did you ever perform a feat of strength that you were like, wow, this one's like, for example, right now I'm working on trying to lift the Fat Man Blob and trying to lift the Thomas Inch. I'm around
Okay.
a half 90 blob. And like I said, I'm just turning the corner on about 140-pound thick handle dumbbell. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm working towards. Is there anything you ever work towards that like you really, you think back, you're like, man, that was a cool feat of strength.
I love the showman stuff, the driving the nails through the boards. Those are Those
Oh
are
yeah.
fun. Yeah, the bending, the horseshoes. I guess closing a number three iron mind was
Hey,
pretty big for me, and
that's
it
a big
was it
one.
was one of those things where I never specifically worked grippers either. It was just all
Mm.
the other grip stuff I was doing that allowed me to close that. So
That's a
that's fun when
rare.
you,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
yes.
nothing to sneeze at. That's a rare feat in itself. I struggle with grippers, and specifically have to. I'm now the past couple months specifically trying to train them twice a week because,
Okay.
unfortunately, I don't have that transference. Like I'm doing great hub lifting and lifting thick handled stuff and blobs and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff, and then I grab a gripper and it's like I'm 10 years old. Like I,
It's like kryptonite. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what happens.
Yeah.
Like none of my grip strength transfers to grippers somehow. So
Uh,
so yeah, I've specifically been training them a little more. And there's a company, Canon Powerworks, that makes standard
oh
grippers. That
yeah, yeah, Matt. Yeah,
yeah,
Matt and I know each other. We did
great
tons
guy.
of grip contests in
Yep,
Minnesota. Yeah.
great guy. Really great company. He rates. I've sent all my grippers to be rated by him. I bought a ton of grippers from him. He's helped me identify some vintage grippers and helped me on that end of things. Educate
Okay.
me
Yeah.
on old worn tedding grippers and things like that. So it's been
Yes.
really cool interacting with him. But his line of grippers are my favorite modern, like produced right now grippers, the standard grippers. They have a knurling on them that's like, it's like the Three Little Bears, you know. It's just it's not too aggressive, it's not too passive, it's just right. Like
Just
it's,
right.
yeah, it's perfect. So yeah, very cool company. So when it comes to start wrapping things up here, I mean, one of the things I think is great about Home Gym Con, and listeners, if you haven't gone to Home Gym Con the past 2 years, it's going to be in Louisville next year, Louisville, Kentucky. You can save money on tickets by using code VINTAGE. So just a little gift from me to you. Use code VINTAGE and you can save a little money on Home Gym Con tickets. But one of the cool things that I've witnessed over and over and over again would be what I said about your booth. You know, companies that, this exposure to these ticket holders that may not have seen you before, but then they're like, what the heck is this? He's got a, a high striker and he's got these
Yes.
hammers, but also collaborations. And it sounds like, AbMat, you mentioned Eric, you mentioned working with Matt a little bit and knowing Canon Powerworks. What has there been any other kind of collaborations or things in your career, or how do you feel about that? Because
Um.
a lot of times, and there's been recent stuff with some companies with PRX and Vendetta and Kaizen, there's a lot of like negative interactions, I guess I'd call it,
Oh
between
yes.
companies where like, oh, this was mine and you took it and this is
Yes.
this.
Yes.
And you know so far
No.
I've heard the opposite from you, friendly interactions. So you've been
Well.
around for quite a while here in the industry.
I,
What's and I mean that as a compliment. What's
yes.
how's that gone? Like, how have you avoided
My
that kind of negative interaction, or have you had those experiences?
I have had them. What I've avoided is making them like a talking thing where I want to spread that negative disease. I've been screwed over, yes, by
Yeah.
some big names, by others, but it's one of those things where I want this to be enjoyable for me, and
Hmm.
I've got a lot of ideas, so
Yeah.
it is what it is. I don't, and it's competition too. If you want to take something and make it better, or if you just want to take it, go ahead. I'll
Yeah.
find people that want to work. I think today the
Hmm.
atmosphere is so, it seems to be more wide open for working together.
Hmm.
And that's just from my short time, which is a pretty long time in the
Yeah.
business. When I first started my first site in 2006, and I think it was a year later, one of my customers um, emailed me, asked if I was having my stuff made in China, and sent me a link to this Chinese site that
Oh,
had a stronger grip section,
no
and they
way.
had literally my pictures and my products with the
Wow.
stronger grip logo, but my head was cut off.
It's like a
they
horror
didn't
movie.
even
They cut your head off.
they didn't give me like a Bruce Lee head or nothing. It was just
Oh my gosh.
so it's like,
Wow.
no, I'm not sending stuff over there.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was still working a full time job, and
Yeah.
it
So
just it's one of those things where you've got to come to grips with that other people do have ideas. Yes,
Yeah,
they do get ripped off, but it's also possible that someone else has a similar idea.
sure.
Um, and
And I've
I
seen that
witnessed
happen.
that. Yes, and it
Yeah.
does. So to get all poopy about, oh, they took my idea, how much time or effort have you put into like making that into something? If that's
Mhm.
the case, then maybe you've got a gripe. But if it's just an idea that hasn't been watered and nurtured and spent any time on, I don't think they have a right to gripe. I mean, yes, they
I think,
do, and go ahead. I just want no
yeah,
part of
yeah.
it.
Well, I think that's all solid advice, and I really like that. Well, I like your first point that hey, I'm not a one-trick pony. I've got a lot of ideas. Like my eggs aren't, not to use too many metaphors, but my eggs aren't all in this one basket. Like
Right.
not that it doesn't sting
Uh,
possibly that you see someone copy something, but well,
yeah.
I got a whole arsenal of things going on here. And then I also like that second kind of point that you made because yeah, I think there's a balancing act, and I only have the one product that I've developed, so I really
Yeah.
don't know firsthand. But I've been interacting. I've interviewed. Gosh, at this point, I'm coming on 50 to 60 different company owners and things, and
Yeah. And
uh,
that's a lot. Yeah.
so I mean, I've spoken quite a bit with a lot of people in this industry about their products, about their companies, about where they came from, about their home gym history, and
Yeah.
it's so I've kind of heard everything, and I like that balanced approach is what I'd call your approach. That is this a fight to fight or not?
Right. Right. And
Is
it
it
is
worth my
business.
emotional wellness to fight this or not?
Yes. Yes. Yep. I've got kids. I've got a wife that
Exactly.
I want them to have. I want them to have a positive experience with me. So if there's
Exactly.
any negative stuff, it's gone.
Totally.
And also it's business, so there are ways you can get patents, you can do
Hmm.
the best you can to protect yourself, within the states. But again, that's another investment in, okay,
Oh,
is this idea worth doing
yeah,
doing
yeah.
that? Because
Totally.
that's that road you go down where it's like, you don't know yet if it's going to be received, so you can have the protection. And I'm also, I've seen two sides of that too. I had a friend in Minnesota has a machine shop, and he had a pretty elaborate machine that was for cutting something. Had a nice plaque on his wall with a patent, and he pretty much said that's all it is a plaque on the wall, because he's
Yeah,
been knocked off overseas and there's
yeah.
nothing he can do about it. So when
The
it comes
best.
to simpler,
Well, to bring up Mike from
micro
Microgains,
gains.
he said something that I thought was interesting when he was on my podcast, Lift History. He said, it's costly to get a patent, but then it's also costly to defend the patent because the patent office
Yes.
isn't going to defend your patent for you. You've got to send
No.
out and you've got to have a lawyer write up cease and desist letters. You've got to pursue those things. You've got to pay that lawyer. And at a
Yeah.
certain point, it becomes whack a mole, and you're just, so
Yeah.
like his dumbbell fractional dumbbell plates that are really slick that he patented that
Yes.
it's a great invention. Like it's really cool. I mean, it's something that he's had to defend. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to stand my ground and I'm going to defend that because it's something that I invented and I feel strongly about. It's a top seller for me. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a weird balance. And like you said, it is a balance and it's, you know, but I think people sometimes don't recognize that other side
They
of it.
don't.
It's not just getting a
Yeah.
plaque on
Yeah.
the wall. You got to defend
Right.
that plaque on the wall.
Well, and when you're just a small operation,
Yeah,
it's hard to do.
it's a
And a
lot.
lot of the other
It's a
companies
lot.
either have more money behind them or are able to do it. And yeah, what's your sanity worth?
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, well, I think it's. I love talking to a wide range of companies, big and small, and I like talking to guys like you that you don't have 150 employees. You've got
Yeah.
so many hours in a day, and
Right.
what you can accomplish, and
Yes.
so that's pretty
Nope.
cool.
And I've loved keeping it that small just so I can have that kind of that personal connection with the equipment. And when people
Yeah,
get it, they feel it. You know what I mean? It's not
yeah,
something they're going to get and it's just going to sit there. It's going to talk to them and beckon them to use it. whether it's a sword or a hammer or a blob.
I think that's a perfect description of your product. So,
Mm.
as we talk about it, why don't we end out here? Where can people find you? I mean, if I have it correct, which I hope at this point, since we've been talking for an hour,
Yeah.
Ryan J. Pitts presents, and that is the company. But then you have branding underneath that, Stronger Grip. So you can go to strongergrip.com, correct?
Yep, you can go to strongergrip.com. I think all the domains will lead back to there, but yeah,
Gotcha.
strongergrip.com. And
Very cool.
yeah,
And
there are
then
my social.
on all your socials, we'll drop links into the description below. But you can find
Okay.
Ryan J. Pitts Presents and Stronger Grip both on Instagram. And
Yeah,
then
Metal Master.
Metal Master,
And
yeah.
I'm going to work on getting more from you seeing my stuff. What would you want to see more? More of how it's made,
In
how
terms of the
stuff's
content you're
used.
putting out there,
Yeah, yeah. That I struggle with content
well,
because it's one of those things where.
one of the things that I frequently hear from small business owners in this industry is that, wow, so many customers don't recognize that it's just like one guy here doing this,
Yeah,
or one
yeah.
lady here doing this. Like, it's just one person doing this. So that's what I think helps to put content out showing how you make stuff, because then people do realize, oh wait, it's Ryan's like in his shop, like welding this for someone right now. So yeah,
Yeah.
that would be my suggestion. My two
Like,
cents would
hey, that guy
be,
makes my brake pads.
and it's just kind of cool to see how it's made. It's an area that, even something like when I was at Mutant Metals, I got to see Chris put the handles for my dip attachment onto the lathe and work on them,
Okay.
and that was like a highlight of like a piece
Yes,
of equipment
yes.
in my gym, seeing like, oh my gosh, he's like on the lathe, like working on them, he's putting the rings on them right now. So that was so cool. So yeah, I think putting that out there also excites the customers to see it being made. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be my suggestion. A lot of in the works. Start that camera up while you go to work.
Yes, yes. I'm doing it anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm doing it anyway, so might as well.
Right.
So hey, and listeners, please head out to Home Gym Con. You can see Ryan J. Pitts Presents and Stronger Grip there at
Yeah.
Home Gym Con. Maybe we'll have the High
We'll be
Striker
bringing
out
more
there.
stuff. I'll have swords. I'll have battle
Oh,
axes.
cool. Very cool. And thanks so much for coming by Home Gym History, Ryan. It's been a pleasure.
Yep. Thank you, Rob.
All right, take care.
You too.